Hello everyone, my name is Mirhat Sharifjan and welcome to Eurasian-Express, a channel where we discuss latest developments and events in Central Asia, the Caucasus, Russia, China and other parts of Eurasia. Today we're going to talk about probably one of the most important events that took place in recent days. We'll be talking about the visit to Beijing of the Russian President Vladimir Putin. Vladimir Putin arrived to China, and we saw many reports which reminded us previous reports, similar reports covering Xi Jinping's visit to Moscow and Russian officials' visit to Beijing. There were ceremonies, greetings, and joint statements about eternal brotherhood and friendship and partnership. There were statements about joint measures, efforts against Western dominance and hegemonism. That's what we always see when this kind of visits happen. But this visit was a little bit different. First of all, it came just days after US President Donald Trump visited Beijing. And Putin's visit several days after looked like the whole geopolitical structure in Eurasia was changing and reversing. It looked like both Trump and Putin sought some kind of, let's say, understanding, quote unquote, understanding, or some favor from Beijing. Beijing or Xi Jinping looked like a center of Eurasia, of the Eurasian continent, which was able to solve many global issues in which both the United States and Russia were interested. Also, it looked like Russia was in a position of a weaker partner. And it's interesting to see how everything is changing. For many years, especially after the collapse of the Soviet Union, Russia was repeatedly warning the world about the Western domination. Russia criticized NATO expansion. Russia criticized global American influence. It was criticizing European political pressure and especially Western sanctions which were imposed on Russia for its ongoing invasion of Ukraine that was launched more than 4 years ago. And Moscow also presented itself as an independent civilization, a special civilization, Ruski Mir, the Russian world, which is capable to stand both against West and East and could play a major key role in relations between West and East. But things have changed, and changed dramatically, we can say. The Russian media reported that over 40 agreements, special documents, were signed during Putin's visit to Beijing. It sounds very impressive, but the issue is not about what was signed, but the most important thing is what was not signed. The very ambitious project, Power of Siberia 2 pipeline project, which Russia needs desperately, has not been resolved. The agreement was not signed. It looks like China doesn't want to be involved in this project, which was probably a major blow to Putin, who most likely expected that the agreement will be reached about this project. And this situation shows us a very important thing. The situation indicates that yes, Russia desperately needs China, but it looks like China does not need Russia equally. And this asymmetry looks like a major defining geopolitical reality of the 21st century. The situation today cannot be predicted during the Cold War, where China was in 50s, for instance, was considered as a junior partner of Russia. And Russia was like a big brother of Soviet Union, sorry. Soviet Union was like a big brother for China then. The situation is completely different. Chinese economy today is the second one in the world after the US economy. And definitely Chinese economy is much larger than Russian economy. China today dominates electric vehicle production, artificial intelligence, other technologies, electronics. China is very skillful in infrastructure construction and in other spheres. Russia today just exports raw material, oil and gas, timber, agricultural products, and that's it. In other words, the partnership between Russia and China looks very unequal. Many Russian analysts understand that very well, but they don't say that openly in the state television on a daily basis. After years of sanctions, war expenditures, technological isolation, and increasing dependence on Chinese market, Moscow now faces a new geopolitical dilemma. And the irony is that for many years, Russia was criticizing the West for its expansion and dominance, and now finds itself in a very different situation in which Russia might fall down under influence and dependence on another superpower. And this is particularly visible across Eurasia. Take Central Asia, for instance. Take these countries: Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, and Uzbekistan. For centuries, Russia considered this as its own geopolitical backyard. But look what's happening now. Chinese investments, Chinese constructions, Chinese involvement practically in every sector of economy in Central Asia is visible. And it looks like China is turning to a major big brother in Central Asia these days. Russia sees it. Russia sees it, and Russia tries not to talk about it too much. That's why when the Russian state media talks about so-called equal partnership with Beijing, in fact, it sounds like an attempt to veil the real situation. This partnership cannot be called equal. But it would be a mistake to say that China doesn't get anything from Russia. China gets a diplomatic support on the global arena from Russia. Also, Russia, which owns very heavy military and especially the nuclear arsenal, is a good ally for China when China tries to solve some issues with the western part of the world. Russia sells oil and gas to China on discounted prices. So China gets something from Russia. And also from China's perspective, Russia also serves another very important role. Russia distracts Western attention from China in Asia, from China's projects in Asia. The West is now focused on the war in Ukraine, on Russia's invasion of Ukraine, and that helps China to implement some projects in Asia without much, let's say, attention from the West. However, Beijing tries to keep the cooperation with Moscow to a certain level only. It doesn't support Moscow's war in Ukraine openly, tries not to irritate the West, because China has huge economic interests in the West and needs investments and economic and business cooperation with the Western world, especially with the United States. In other words, Chinese relations with Russia today are not based on some kind of ideology or romantic brotherhood or something, or let's say revolutionary brotherhood of 1950s, as it used to be. Today, China is very pragmatic. China always thinks about its own national interests when dealing with Russia and other countries. Again, the irony is, for years, Russia warned the world about the American dominance. But now Russia is in the situation when it can become under the influence of another superpower, China. And that would happen not through military occupation, not through military conflict, not through ideological conquest like it was during the Cold War, but through economics, trade, technology, financial systems, and strategic necessity. That's why it's possible to say that Putin's visit to China reflected the changing geopolitical picture in Eurasia. And Russia may become a country which occupies the position which she never wanted to occupy, the weaker partner of a bigger country. This was Eurasian Express. Thank you very much for your attention. 再见и до скорых встреч.